welcome to Coming to New England. My name is April Eisman. My guest today is my grandmother. Thanks for coming in, Grandma.
You're welcome, dear.
Now let's start off. What is your full name?
Joan Eisman.
And when and where were you born, and how did your family come to live here?
I was born in Ridgewood, New York on June 11th, 1940. And my family got to move to Rhode Island when we got married.
Oh, okay.
Because Grandpa was transferred up to Amherst.
Describe the personalities of some of your family members. What are they like?
Oh, extremely witty, funny, hysterical. Good looking. Have to have a little good looking in there, right? Very, very emotional. Very emotional. Which then leads to very loving. And I think I'll just leave it at that.
Aw. What was school like for you as a child?
Wow, we're going back a few years, aren't we? Okay. It was wonderful. It's not what the children have today. I walked to my public school. I walked to my high school. I just loved being there. I was involved in everything. I volunteered in different activities. Even in little grammar school, I volunteered. I said, oh, I'll do the milk today, Mrs. Butler. And that's what my childhood school days were like.
Do you remember what your best and worst subject was?
Oh, best subject, English/drama. But worse, calculus in high school.
Mine too. I
couldn't fathom it at all.
Where did you attend grade school, high school, or college?
PS 153 Queens was the grade school till 8th grade. Then Grover Cleveland High School in Ridgewood. And I stopped at high school.
Oh, nice. Do you remember any fads from your youth, popular hairstyles or clothing?
Oh my gosh, the poodle skirts, the saddle shoes. What a fad that was. Hair teased all different ways. Permanents were very popular. So if you walked in and you just had a permanent, they would know it because it was all frizz. And everyone would laugh. Oh, Joan, and they could smell it. It smelled horrible, just horrible.
The smell never went away.
But I liked the poodle. I liked the poodle skirts. I was into that. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
That's cute.
Because I like to dance. You know.
Of course, you got to have the skirt to go with it.
Right.
What was your religion growing up? What church, if any, did you attend?
I was Protestant Lutheran, and I attended Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church right in Maspeth.
Are there any physical characteristic traits that run in our family?
Oh, I would say thin, and then muscular, and then I would say a little chubby here and there, but very good looking.
Very good looking.
All very good looking.
Oh.
Yeah.
What is the name of your spouse, siblings, or parents?
Spouse, William Eisman. Siblings, Karen Risdell, Robert Maresh. And what was the third one?
Parents.
Oh, parents, of course, yes. Bertha Janice and Alfred Maresh.
When and how did you meet your spouse, and what did you do when you went on dates?
Oh, my spouse. My grandmother lived in Hicksville. My intended spouse lived in Hicksville, right around the corner. And I was very friendly with his sister. And Billy Eisman used to come and ride his bicycle. And he'd look at me and he'd, make little jokes and whatever, and then I didn't see him. High school was finished, he went off to college, and then all of a sudden I was walking around the block one day and his mother yelled out, Joan Maresh, is that you? Yeah, well, I'll have to tell Billy. Well, that's the story. Here we are.
No.
But dates, if you wanted to know dates, we did movies and out to dinner, but...
General stuff.
He fell in love with me right away. But it took me a little longer, unfortunately.
Takes the girls a little longer to warm up to the guy.
Exactly.
What was it like when Grandpa proposed to you? Where and when did it happen? Do you remember? Of course, hopefully.
I do. It was so funny because he picked me up for a date and he said to me, well, where do you want to go tonight? And I said, I don't care. He says, well, how about a drive-in movie? Because it was out on Long Island. And I said, fine, we'll go to a drive-in movie. And he says, what movie do you want to see? And I said, I don't care, pick a movie. So the movie was over. He was very nice, though. He asked me if I wanted popcorn, soda pop, stuff like that. So we did that, and then he drove me home, and he just turned around and he looked at me and he said, you know, we're having such a wonderful time together. He says, I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you. Would you marry me, Joan Irene Maresh? And of course I go, yes, of course. And that's how he proposed.
What do you believe is the key to a successful marriage?
Oh, I believe the caring, the sharing. To love one another with no other boundaries there. Never go to bed angry. And try to do things as much as possible together. Have your little alone time, but always save that time for the togetherness, whether you want to shop together, go to the store together. And I don't know, I think that's the wonderful part of Grandpa and I, that we like the same things. And we're just happy with the simple things in life.
Talk about the day that JFK was assassinated. Where were you and what were you doing?
Oh, that was a sad day. Yes, that was November 22nd, 1963. I was I was actually a new bride, but more than that, I was a very new mother. And my son first, Keith, your father, was only 19 months old. And he was down for a nap, and I had the TV on, and I'm watching TV, and it came across the screen. And I couldn't believe it, the shock. I'll never forget that day as long as I live, how Walter Cronkite would sit at the anchor desk, and he could barely speak, that our president was shot, and then he had to tell the world that our president, was killed. And I remember being very emotional about it. Grandpa called me from work, and he said, did you hear? And I said, oh, it's just terrible, just terrible. Because you have to understand, 1960, 1963 was his very short reign at the presidency, and it was like a Camelot type of situation with him and Jacqueline. And everyone thought he was to be a wonderful president, and had he lived, I do believe he would have ran for both terms, and he would have been, 8 years, as a presidency. But I also, what was very moving, it was when he passed, and Jacqueline had to go with him from the White House down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol so he could lie in state. And she walked behind that horse-ridden hearse. And it was so mesmerizing. I was grasping for something else to do, but I felt as though I just couldn't go away. And my father had wanted us in for dinner. And I kept calling him saying, Dad, I just can't come, because it was an hour ride from Long Island into Maspeth. And he understood in his own little way, but I couldn't leave that television set. I don't know if it had anything to do, because my mother passed away in May of 1963, and JFK was November of 1963. And it was just a very sad time. And I can remember just watching the TV for the whole thing, for how many days it took. And I think that was a very traumatic experience in my life, because I was so young. I was so young, and a new baby, but it was sad, because it was just a grueling time for everyone. And I think when everything was over and all was said and done, you said, okay, well, I guess he's in a better place, But you had to feel for Jacqueline and little John and Caroline, and they didn't have a father anymore, So it was, I think that's the best way I could probably describe it to you. That was a very emotional time in my life.
How would you say, how is the world today different from what it was like when you were a child?
Oh, dear. When I was a child, we didn't worry about walking down the street, getting on a bus, taking a bus to a subway, going into New York City, going to a movie house. There was no violence. There was no disturbances. Everyone got along with everyone. And look what we have today. You can't be shut off from everything, no. But what a difference for the children growing up today than what I had. I mean, we could stay out in the neighborhood till 9:30. Now, I know that doesn't sound late, for a lot of people, but if you were only between 10 and 13, it was late. But everyone in the neighborhood was right there, and the parents didn't worry because everything was safe.
What would you say, what are some world events that had the most impact on you growing up? JFK, would you say, was probably the most tragic?
I think JFK, was the most, yes. I think when Nixon had to give up his presidency, that was another thing. Going on and on, I mean, I could just, rattle off different, world events. But I just think it was just sometimes more difficult, than others. When things didn't work out politically, and you know that the world was going to suffer for that. But of course, it can't compare to what we're doing now with this world. This is a very sad world. I worry more for my children and my grandchildren of what's going to come in the years to come.
How would you define the American dream?
Oh, the American dream. Well, my American dream is really for my family that's going to remain. They'll have the American dream of life, pursuit of happiness. I am at the age where how many more years do I have? But my children and my grandchildren, my American dream would be for them to grow up in a world of peace and love, and that they could be happy.
Thank you so much for being here, Grandma.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that's all the time we have today. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.